Hello, hello, hello. If you are here, pop a comment in so that I know that someone's here. I see a comment from Margaret, but I don't think she's actually in the chat right now. Hi, Glenda. I'm just booting my husband out of the room. I thought I would be comfortable doing a live with him in the office, and then I just told him, no, you have to leave. I'm way too self-conscious, so he's leaving now. Goodbye. Okay. So, can you hear me, Glenda? I think you're the only one in the chat right now. I can see your comments. And you guys are just going to have to put up with my slowness because it's my first time going live, so I'm going to be slow on the uptake. Hub's not allowed, yeah. I mean, he didn't like barge in here. He was like doing something. This is also where our computer is, and so he was going to do something. And I said, oh, yeah, that's fine. And then as soon as I went live, like a minute later, I turned to him and I said, no, you have to leave. I'm way too self-conscious. Happy birthday. Thanks. I think it's been a little while since I checked, but I'm pretty sure my official Booktube birthday is February 22nd. But I wanted to do this on the weekend because I just don't have the time or inclination to do this on a weekday. So, yeah, so that's why we're here on a Sunday. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. Hopefully you're having a nice lazy Sunday like I am. And yeah, so thanks to everyone who posted questions. There's a delay, Glenda says. Yeah, I don't, it's hard to judge how long the delay is. So I'll do my best to get to them, and I'm going to keep an eye on the comments to make sure I don't miss something. So yeah, but yeah, thanks for everyone who posted a question on my little announcement video. And if you have questions that you want to ask, like pop them in, and when I see them, I'll get to them. But I did take, I was pretty diligent. I'm sorry if I missed anyone's question, but I'm pretty sure I copied all of the questions from that original video. Glenda is asking if we have snow. Oh, yes, we have snow. In fact, we had a snow day on Friday. My daughter did not go to school. I wonder, I almost kind of want to move I'm right next to a window, but I think I don't think my dinky little camera on this laptop will show you the snow. We'll give it a try. I think it might get washed out. Can you see? I don't know how well you can see, but we have lots of snow. And I don't mind the snow. It's annoying when you have to shovel it and snow blow it and stuff like that. But I really hate the heat. And so like summer's not my favorite. And my favorite outdoor activities to do are all winter stuff. Like I don't really care for swimming. Like all of the fun summer activities are ones that like just aren't my jam. But I love snowshoeing. It's like my favorite thing to do. I've never tried skiing because I have a pretty intense fear of falling, but anyway. So welcome everybody. I know I'm pretty like slow on the uptake here, but you'll have to just bear with my newbiness with live and the apparent delay in the from when comments are posted to when I see them. I'm going to get right into the questions, and then if more people come, then great. Yeah, you can see the snow. Yeah, we have quite a bit. It looks deceiving. So we have like a stream behind our house, and it's covered in snow, but I don't think there's actually like a layer of ice, so we can't walk along it, which is a bummer because that's pretty nice to do, but we didn't have enough cold days all in a row. We had too much like freeze and then thaw, so it's not safe to be out on the water, which is a bummer. But anyway, so yeah, I'm posting the first question. I'm posting this one first because maybe I can like solicit some questions. But Jen from Remembered Reads had asked, what question did I secretly wish someone had asked, but that hasn't come up yet? And which, great question. I couldn't think of like a specific question, but I think like all of the questions I got were, not all of them, but most of them were related to either books or Booktube. And I like when I ask questions on other people's Q&As, maybe it's because I'm a nosy Nelly, I don't know, but I like asking a question about people's childhoods, like what they liked to do growing up, or like what they wanted to be when they grew up, or like favorite memories, or yeah, I'm into that. And I also like asking like non-bookish questions like movies and TV and whatnot. So if you have anything related to those, feel free to ask, but that's kind of like those are like the general topics that weren't asked that I would have asked someone else. Oh, Glinda says, I hate the heat. I grew up in Florida. I went to Florida when I was a kid. We went to Disney World. I know, super lucky. But because of school and like probably my parents' work schedules, I don't know, we went like, I want to say it was the very end of August, like right before school started again in September. It was like the end of summer thing. And like I was quite young, like 5 years old, and I can still remember the humidity. I had never experienced something like that before in my life. It was so intense. So that was my very limited experience in Florida. But yeah, the heat is no joke. I'm kind of like, for those who follow Margaret Pernard, I don't know if she's still planning to do more of these, but last year she had done a bunch of StreamYard, like Sunday StreamYard, I think is what she called them, and she invited other people on and she gave them a StreamYard tutorial. And I had no like immediate plans to do anything live at the time, but now I'm like, man, I wish I would have taken her up on that, because I'm kind of just learning as I go. But so far, the interface is very like intuitive. Okay. Moving on, I had a couple of questions from Melissa Furman specifically about my name because we share a name, which I love. I love anyone else like that when you meet someone who has your name. I guess unless you have a very super common name, maybe this isn't like as big of a thing. But yeah, when I meet another Melissa, it's like so exciting. But anyway, she had asked, do you know why you were named Melissa? And do you like your name? And I don't think there's like a like a super, I don't want to say super special, but I don't think there's like a reason, like I wasn't named after anybody. I think it was just kind of like my parents liked the name. I do know that my parents kind of switched back and forth naming us. So I think my mom had said when I was born, it was my dad's turn to kind of choose the name. Although I'm sure, like, obviously it had to be a name they both liked. But I suppose then that was my dad's favorite name. And do I like my name? Yes, I do. I think everyone, or I'm assuming everyone at some point goes through a stage where either they don't like their name, or maybe they hear another name, or they hear a name that their parents were considering and they're like, why didn't you name me that? That's so much better. I think we probably all go through that. But now as an adult, I really like the name Melissa. I think it's very pretty. People have heard of it, so I don't necessarily like have to spell it out, although there's another question that Melissa has about that. But like people know the name, but it's not so common that I meet a ton of Melissas. So it's not like I'm one of like, 50 Sarahs, or like something else super common. Glenda says, I never knew anything different talking about Florida, but I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I love it. I'm curled up in a blanket. It's in the 30s here. Yes, I love your name. Thank you, Glenda. As a Canadian who uses Celsius, I have no idea what the 30s, like, I can't conceptualize what that would feel like. And because it's my first time on StreamYard, I'm like very, I don't know, I'm kind of scared to like open a tab. I'm afraid I'm gonna like lose it. Is 30s like, you'll have to explain to me, is that like put on a light jacket? Like what kind of weather is that? We had to, when we went to Florida when I was a kid, we drove because my dad was afraid of flying. So we drove from Canada all the way down to Florida. It took us 3 days. And so I know we drove through both Carolinas, but I don't have a strong memory of like the weather there. I just have that strong memory of how humid Florida was. So yes, Glenda, please educate me. 30s in Fahrenheit, what kind of weather is that? Thank Katya for the birthday wishes, or the birthday, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, well wishes. This is why I edit videos, by the way. I can never find the word I want when I want it. Props to Margaret and anyone else who does lives all the time, because I knew going into this, like, I'm just going to flub up my words a bunch and have to be okay with that. And then Melissa asked another question about whether it irks me when people spell our name wrong. So those are some interesting spellings. I have seen the Mellisa before. Some people have misspelled my name that way, rather than Melissa. But it doesn't really bother me because I can just like correct it and move on, and it's fine. It does baffle me a little bit though, because Melissa is by far the more popular way to spell it. I have never actually met another Melissa who spells it a different way. Oh no, that's not true. That's not true. I met one Melissa who spelled it with a Y instead of an I. but I don't know. So it just baffles me more than anything, because the way we spell it, Melissa, is like by far the more common way to spell it. But it doesn't really bother me, as long as they get the name right. I get called Michelle a lot. Apparently, I look like a Michelle. I don't know. Yeah, and it really bothers me when people call me Mel. I hate that. I try to very um, diplomatically, nicely tell them it's Melissa. I hate being called Mel. No offense if your name is Mel. I do not identify with that nickname at all. Are you judging the Booktube prize this year? Do you prefer judging fiction or nonfiction? I am judging this year. Last year was my first year judging, and I just signed up for everything because I was really excited, which I'm kind of glad I did, because then I got to experience everything, because I judged 3 rounds, and I judged a round of fiction, a round of nonfiction, and a round of translated fiction. So I got to experience everything. This year I decided just to put my name forward for one division, because what was hard about judging like the 3 rounds and them all being different was that there was never any overlap. Like when I went to judge a new round, I hadn't read any of those books, so I had to read 6 books every single time. And as a slow reader, that was a bit much. So this time I put my name in for nonfiction only. And it's not because I preferred judging that more than fiction. It was more so because I naturally read more fiction anyway. And so I wanted this as an excuse to get to more nonfiction titles, is why I chose nonfiction this year. Sorry if you can hear my daughter yelling in the background. She's playing Mario Party and apparently is having a lot of fun. Glenda, I'm hot-blooded, so I have on a sweater, flannel PJs, and a blanket, but I have no heat on. That doesn't help me. Is 30s cold? Is it cold? So it sounds, Glenda, like you are in the part of the world you need to be in. If you need the heat. You wouldn't want to be up where I am. I don't like the heat, and I like, not that I like the cold, but I have good outdoor gear, and I can take it and it's fine. Yes, I am in Canada. I'm in Eastern Canada in the Maritimes. And it gets really cold here. Not as cold as, you have to be careful, because whenever an East Coast Canadian complains about the cold, then everybody in the prairies is all like, well, you think that's cold? It's like, okay, I get it. But it does get cold here. It gets we had a day a week or two ago where it was, I'm sorry, this is going to be in Celsius, so I don't know what the Fahrenheit is on this. It was minus 30 something. It was really cold. Yeah, that was a day that you just stay in. Okay. I had quite a few questions about Booktube, I guess. Chelsea from Voyage of a Time Wanderer asked which video I'm most proud of, and or a video that you wish had gotten more attention. And I don't really have the best answer, because I couldn't think of one single standalone video that I was super proud of, or that I thought oh man, I wish more people had seen this. But I am quite proud of my pop culture osmosis series, because, well, one, because I was very scared to do it initially, because it's vlogging and I hadn't vlogged before. And that was just kind of a new way to film. I found it much more comfortable to sit in front of a camera and talk. But vlogging and taking your camera with you and doing little bits, I was worried that it wouldn't feel natural, or anyway. So I'm proud that I actually did it. And those are quite difficult to edit together. And so I like the finished products. And also they're a lot of fun to do. So I'm proud that I was able to put something together that was also like a lot of fun, because sometimes you might have an idea and then you go to execute it and you're like, oh, this is misery and I hate doing this. But that's something that, yeah, it's like a lot of fun to put together. So I'm like proud of that series. um, minus 30 Celsius. Yes. I think with the wind chill, I think without the wind chill, it was like minus 25 maybe. But yeah, it's that kind of weather where when you go out, you start getting like frost on your eyelashes. Like it was, yeah. Minus 1C. Is that 30? What you were saying, Glenda? Is that the equivalent of 30? Minus 1, that's cold. It's below freezing. That's cold. Yeah, as much as I try, I cannot wrap my head around Fahrenheit. All I know is that like room temperature is like what, around 70? And 100 is very hot. Anything else, like I have no frame of reference for. Jim from Jim's books reading and stuff asked if Booktube inspired me to read outside my comfort zone. Actually, Jim put out a video recently about reading outside his comfort zone, which I thought was very good. I always read widely. Again, this is why I typically edit my stuff. I fumble my words a lot. I've always read widely in terms of like different genres and stuff. So I don't think Booktube, sorry, I keep kicking the table my computer's on, so you might see some wobbles. So I don't think Booktube inspired me to read outside my comfort zone in terms of like genre necessarily. But I think it definitely opened my eyes to a lot of like authors I hadn't heard of and like that kind of thing, or like maybe subgenres. Sorry, Jim, I didn't have like a great answer for this. I racked my brain a little bit, but I just couldn't think of anything, like any specific way that it forced me to read outside my comfort zone. So yeah, sorry, I didn't have like the best answer for that. But I think just in terms of like getting exposed to lots of different things, different authors and whatnot. Margaret Pennard asked, what's a book that makes you think of Booktube every time, besides a Booktube prize or one of your osmosis books? This was a hard one too, because like there's lots of books that are popular on Booktube, but they're also just popular like outside of Booktube. So to me, that's not like a Booktube book. So I was trying to think of like a book that I heard a lot of hype on Booktube, but not like not outside of Booktube. And the only one I could really think of was not a book, but an author, was Max Porter. So he's a author from the UK, and when I first started like watching Booktube and stuff, everyone was talking about his book Grief is the Thing with Feathers, and they were talking about it so much, and I ended up reading it, and I hadn't heard anything outside of Booktube. But maybe that's because I'm in Canada. Maybe in the UK, like his stuff was more like hyped, like just in general at like bookstores and whatnot. But like I hadn't heard of him. I hadn't heard of any of his books. I hadn't heard people talking about him. And so I picked up that book, and I was kind of like lukewarm about it. I liked part of it, and I disliked part of it. And then his other book, which I just don't think he's an author for me, so I haven't picked it up. But then a couple years after that, people were talking about Lanny and going on about that book. But I, again, have not heard people talk about that book outside of Booktube. So I don't know if that's a regional thing, if it's because I'm in Canada. Maybe like in the UK, he's more like talked about in like non-Booktube circles, but he's the one that came to mind. Okay, Glenda educating me. 32 is freezing. 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing. So anything in the 20s and teens is very cold. Okay. I'm probably not going to remember that because 32 is such like a weird number. Like Celsius is so easy because water boils at 100 degrees Celsius and it freezes at 0. Like it's just like so easy for me to like, anyway, like 32, I'm never going to remember that. I remember 70 because sometimes like depending on like how old a building is or something, or like how their thermostats are set, you'll see it in Fahrenheit. So I see like 70. I know that's room temperature. But yeah, I'm probably not going to remember 32. Melissa Furman also asked why my channel is named Fully Booked. And I don't have the greatest answer. I am really not creative with like puns and stuff, but I desperately wanted to like make a pun or something. I wanted like book or reads or something like that in the title. Fully booked kind of has another meaning, and so I thought it sounded good, and it kind of plays out like the first 3 letters of fully are like the same as my last name, so I thought like, oh, that's kind of neat, but that's it. And I thought about a channel name for so long, and I was just spinning my wheels, and I'm like, you know what, I just have to choose something and move on with my life, because I really am envious of people who are just like so creative and they have these like great names. So yeah, Katya, you're in Europe, so I'm assuming most, if not all, European nations use Celsius. Does anywhere besides the US use Fahrenheit? There's a question. I'm sure there's maybe another country there. Glenda, we Americans are very weird. I wouldn't say that. Just when it comes to units of measurement, you like to have your own. It's funny though, because it wasn't always metric in Canada. Like we used imperial, and like my dad and his generation, he always talked in Fahrenheit and like miles and stuff like that. And I could never conceptualize it because by the time I got into school, everything was taught in metric. But when he went to high school, everything was taught in imperial. So he like, oh, it's like, yeah, 50 degrees out. And I'm like, what does that mean? Oh, hi, Margaret. Thanks for dropping by. I've already answered your question, so you'll have to go back and watch it if you want the answer. Which one am I on here? There we go. So Dog-Eared Musings asked, what advice would you give someone who is just starting with their YouTube channel that you wish someone gave you when you started? And I'm like probably not the best person to ask. I have a very small channel, and I've been on Booktube for like a while, and like my growth is very slow. And I don't, this might sound bad, I don't actively do things, like I don't try to grow it really. It's just not a top priority for me. So I don't know. Well, I guess maybe it would depend on what your goal is. If your goal is to like grow a channel to like a certain number, or to a certain range, you want it to be a certain size or whatever, like I'm not the person to ask. If you just want to get into Booktube and be like part of the community, you can do that with a really small channel. And my advice for that would be to only put out the types of videos you really care about or you really want to, because it can be easy to get sucked into the, I got to do like a TBR and a monthly wrap up, and like I have to do things in a certain way. But if you don't want to do them that way, or if that's not engaging to you, then what's going to happen is you'll attract a certain audience. You'll eventually figure out that you don't want to do those videos. You'll change the way you do things, and then you might like lose the audience you built, maybe. Although a lot of people will just find you for your personality. So like my advice would be, do the videos you want to do, and the people who want to watch that kind of content will find you, rather than try to do something maybe you're not into. Like I know so many people who like, yeah, they do like their monthly TBR and their wrap up, whatever. And then after a while, they're just like, you know what? I hate doing wrap ups. I'm just going to do like a weekly reads, or I'm going to do like a recent reads, or like whatever. So that would be my advice, is to do it the way that like makes sense for you, that you want to do it. Margaret, so Americans are dinosaurs. Tell us something we don't know. Well, I mean, I wasn't going to say that. I would never. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like Glenna's saying, you can't wrap your head around metric. It's like whatever you've grown up, like what you were taught in school, it's almost like muscle memory. It just becomes like second nature thinking in that way. And it's like, no matter how hard I try, like feet I can gather because we still, for some reason, use feet like for height. So like I know what like 5 feet, 6 feet looks like. But like I can't conceptualize like a mile, but I can conceptualize or visualize a kilometer. But like that's it. Margaret saying I dropped doing TBRs, instead clinging to my Wednesday wrap-ups. Yeah, and I was mentioning earlier, Margaret, how like you do lives, and I think you had even mentioned on one of them that you were just like, I don't like editing stuff, so like why would I do that? I'll just do it live and then it's posted and it's done. Whereas like as you'll see me live, I fumble my words a lot and I take long pauses. It takes me a while to think of things, so I prefer, like, this is fun because I have never had the opportunity to like actually react and like engage real time, so that's nice. But like on the whole, I like being able to flub things and then go back and edit it and make it look like I didn't say something wrong 5 times before I said it right. Glenna's asking if I'm doing the Reading Across Canada challenge with Jolene. Yes, I'm going to try to, but I'm going to pop into that challenge kind of late because of my Booktube prize reading. And I only found out about it, like, I don't know why, but I just hadn't found Jolene's channel. This is Bookworm Adventure Girl is her channel. And so it wasn't until like the end of January or something that I found her channel. So like I was late to the game anyway. And then the beginning of February is when we got our Booktube prize assignments. And I have a lot of reading to do. My group has a 990-page book as one of the 6. So suffice it to say, I have no time to partake in the Reading Across Canada challenge right now. But what I'm hoping to do is, after this round of Booktube prize is done in April, I might, like, I still do want to hit all of the provinces because I think that would be fun. So what I'm going to do is take like a couple weeks and do the January, February, March, and April challenges. Margaret says, I fumble plenty. People consider that part of the charm, right? I think it's one of those things where like someone watching you talk is like not going to notice, like you're going to notice when you flub something up. So it's probably not a big deal. I just, maybe it's my, like, I don't want to say controlling nature. I don't think I'm super controlling, but I am type A and I like things a certain way. Maybe that means like I'm controlling, but I like being able to like edit things and I like things to like be a certain way. And so I don't think I could do lives like as my main way of doing things, but it's fun like every now and again. What else do we have here? Oh, I love this question. So Jen from Remembered Reads asked, what are the funniest, nicest, and meanest comments you've gotten on this channel? And I didn't have like the time to like go back and really, because I couldn't really think of any off the top of my head at first. And I didn't want to go back and like scroll through like 3 years worth of comments to try to find something. So these might not actually be the funniest, nicest, or meanest comments, but they're the only things that came to mind. I'll start with, it was very hard to think of a mean comment because by and large, and maybe it's just because my channel size is small, mixed with the fact that by and large, this community is like respectful, like not always, but yeah, I haven't really received like mean comments. It was much easier to think of like nice things than mean things. So anyway, I haven't had anything mean like directed at me. Like no one's come on my channel saying, I don't know, like you're nasty or something. I don't know. Like no one has said that. But I did have someone who is now blocked repeatedly make like comments not directed at me, but like misogynist comments based on like books I was reading, because I'd be talking about a book on feminism or whatever. And I tried to engage as diplomatically as possible, like educating, like, actually blah 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 blah. And then eventually they posted something that was like super like anti-indigenous, and I was just like, I cannot have this on my channel, so I blocked them. But that wasn't directed at me. That was just, some ignoramus posting like ignorant stuff and hurtful stuff. The nicest comment, the nicest one I can think of is, I think it was Courtney Ferreter posted on, I don't know what video. It must have been a pop culture osmosis video, because she said, this is my favorite series on Booktube. And I was like, oh my God, that's like the nicest compliment ever. So that's definitely the nicest thing anyone said. And the funniest, this one was the only one that popped into my mind straight away, because it's turned into almost like an inside joke, like with myself. Like I think about this comment a lot. But a year ago or 2 years ago, I don't know, maybe it was 2 years ago now. I think it was 2 years ago, actually. I posted a review of Tenders the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica, and I really hated that book. And like normally I try to keep things on my channel like pleasant. Even if I don't like a book, I don't really rant about it unless it's deeply like there's something deeply offensive about it or something like that. It's not like I've never ranted, but I try, even if I don't like a book, to say like, okay, these are things I didn't like about it, but like not to like trash it, you know what I mean? Or be like mean-spirited about it. But the reason I posted kind of a ranty negative review about that book is that everyone loves it. And so I didn't like, if by and large everything was very positive about that book, I felt like, well, I think there should be some counterpoints, like some balance to this. And I frankly don't think it's as clever as people think it is. And so anyway, so I posted that, and there were lots of people who disagreed with me, which is fine. And some people came in a little bit defensive about it, but like that's also fine, because they were at least trying to like say like, well, I think, I don't agree with your analysis because whatever, or like I don't think you really understood this part of it, or like they were at least coming in good faith to try to talk about it. But one person, and the comment I know verbatim because I just thought it was so hilarious. Someone simply commented, "You don't know what's good." And I feel like I should go back and pin that comment. I think about it a lot, because I didn't respond to that comment. I responded to the others, and I'm like, trying to like clarify my point of view or whatever. But it's like, what do you? Sorry, I'm shaking the table. Like, what do you say to that? It's like, that's just like your opinion, man. Like there's nothing to say to that. And I think about this comment all the time whenever I'm reading anything that has been hyped, that everyone thinks is great, and I'm not having a great time with it. And I'm kind of wondering like, oh, is it me? Like, why am I not liking this? I always think like, well, you don't know what's good, Melissa. Anyway, I think about that comment all the time, and that is definitely the funniest comment I've ever gotten. I clicked something, and then okay, I figured it out. Crisis averted. I'm gonna catch up on the chat a little bit because I feel like I've missed stuff. Glenda, I'm reading When We Were Vikings right now. I've heard of that in passing, but I don't really know what that's about. I read Bloom Where You Are Planted for January. Oh, is this part of the Jolene's challenge that you're talking about? I want to read some of the Indigenous stories, but I have to be in the right frame of mind. Yeah, I get that. I'm reading something. It's not Indigenous. I guess I can't really talk about it because it's for the Booktube Prize, but it's like, it's rough. And I mean, it's nonfiction, so it's like someone's real life, and it's one of those things where it's like I kind of have to read it for the prize, but I thankfully am in the right frame of mind right now, so it's not too bad, but I know what you mean. Margaret, I was just watching a comedy show on Crooked Media where an actor was asked what to use as our saving grace if aliens came to conquer us. Oh, this is a two-parter. And he said the aliens should observe all of us for 2 months. If a person had capacity for kindness every day, then we would be spared. If not, F him. Oh, well. Was that in reference to something specific, or are we talking about like the weird comments that I've gotten on my my videos? Yeah, you can disagree with my takes on books, but like, don't be weird about it. Margaret says, I like this approach, would work on your commenter. Oh, yes, okay. I was just behind. I got ya. Yeah, you don't know what's good. Drop the mic. Yeah, like what do you say to that? Like, okay, thanks for stopping by and commenting. Pin it. I think I am gonna go back and pin it. Like, anyway. Oh, in reference to the misogynist, racist commenter. Yeah. Like, I try to engage a little bit because I do think there can be, not in every circumstance, but there can be room to maybe not change someone's mind entirely, but at least like plant a seed of something. So I was trying to like engage in good faith, but it just got to the point where I was thinking, okay, you've tried multiple times. And like, I want my channel to be a space that's not full of like terrible comments in the comment section. Like, I don't want that for people coming to my channel. So like, I was just like, you know what? Block. I think we should all be liberal with, with the block feature, but I've only ever used it on the one person. So, yeah. So the last little categories, I get like just a couple of questions, a handful of questions that some people were asking specifically about books. Jen from Remembered Reads asked, what's the best and worst recommendation you've received via Booktube? It was hard to choose a best because once you find the booktubers or commenters who you know share your taste in books, you get so many great recommendations. And so it was hard to like narrow that down. The one that came to mind like front and center, and it's probably just because it was my favorite book that I read last year, so I'm like still thinking about it, was The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. That book was just so tailor-made for me. It had like engaging plot, like it was really compelling to read, very like tense throughout, which I like tension in a book, really grounded in like setting and just like really interesting characters. I just loved that book so much. That was probably my that was probably the best book recommendation I got, or one of the best. The worst, I'm going to repeat myself now, but was Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Basterrica. Like, I hated that book, but I don't think it was necessarily like no one could have known that I wouldn't have liked that. And I had so many people say like, oh my gosh, you'll love this. And like, I should have by the description of that book. It's a dystopian about a world where cannibalism has been like, what's the word I'm looking for? But like, it's systemic, and there's like farming practices around like farming people who are not really seen as people. And that sounds right up my alley. I love a dystopian. I love gruesome stuff. But I thought it was not good. But that should have been a good recommendation. So I don't like fault anyone who said like, oh, you should read this. Because I should have liked it, but I just didn't. Am I going to watch the series on Netflix now? Which series was that? Tell me, Margaret, what you're talking about. I haven't been really watching TV shows. I'm rewatching stuff that I know I like because I don't know. That's what I'm in the mood for. Margaret also says, I have so few books that I hate, but I definitely have disappointments. Yeah, I think for the most part, and maybe it's because I DNF quite liberally, so I usually never get to the point where I like hate a book. But I think with Tender as the Flesh, I was just because I should have loved it because it had so many things that I should like in a book, I was just waiting like it's going to get better. Like everything's going to get, like, it's going to make sense eventually. And then I got to the end, and the end, I really was like the cherry on top of that crap sundae. Anyway, I was just like, no. So I stuck with that one. But yeah, I often don't hate books because if I'm not gelling with the writing style or something, I'll just DNF it. And the only time I've really actively hated a book is like I've been forced to finish it because of a book club or something. And yeah. Oh, The Wonder. I didn't realize there was a Netflix series. Or if I did, I've forgotten. I feel like I wouldn't have forgotten about that, though. Have you watched it? Has anyone watched it? Is it good? Oh, man. But the thing is, I doubt it's on Canadian Netflix. Because I hear about a lot of great things on Netflix, and then you go to Netflix and it's like, oh, this isn't in Canada. We don't get the same selection. If it is on Netflix here, then I will definitely check it out. Oh, thanks, Glenda. Glenda's saying she loves the pop culture posts. Maybe I haven't read many of the classics and have similar impressions. It's so fun to do because, yeah, there are these books that are just like, you think you know what they're going to be about, and then it's like, I mean, some of them I get kind of close to, but a lot of times I'm just like, wow, this was nothing like I thought it would be. Yeah, so it's just like so fun to do. And yeah, I never read like a ton of like I read some classics, like because in high school it's on the reading list or whatever, but I was never hugely into classics, and so there was like a lot that I haven't, and I've just started dipping my toe into that. So I'm looking forward to like finding more. Oh man, I've missed like a ton of comments. I must have like blabbered on for a little while. Thanks, Chelsea, for the birthday wishes. Yeah, I think I've already answered all of the questions that you posed, Chelsea, so I'll have to go back on the replay. With Florence Pugh as the nurse. That's in the Wonder adaptation. Okay. I'm going to see if that's on Canadian Netflix. Glenda hated Evelyn Hardcastle. The sad thing is I love the trope. Which one is that? Evelyn Hardcastle. That name's ringing a bell, but I can't really conjure up what that is right now. Okay, Anita has said that The Wonder is on Canadian Netflix. I'm so excited. But can anyone vouch that it's like good? Because I am so like, it's funny because I'll try almost any book, and if I don't like it, like I'll DNF it, whatever. But like I have an aversion to trying a show or a movie if I'm not like super confident that I'll like it. I don't know what that barrier, that block is. Oh, 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Oh yeah, that was the one that was like a mystery where I haven't read that. It was on my to read list a while ago and I never got around to it. And at this point, I don't know. I might have just lost interest in it. Sorry, I have like a super dry throat today, which is why I was sipping tea earlier. So Chelsea says, I still haven't read The Wonder, but the Netflix trailer looked amazing. Okay, I'm going to check it out. The Wonder, the book, was like my favorite book that I read last year. It was so, I just can't say enough. It was like perfect for me. Anyway. Also coming from Jennifer Remembered Read, she asked, what's the weirdest book you've ever read? And I had a hard time with this question because I had a hard time like defining what is meant by weird, because I enjoy speculative fiction, but for me that's not weird. That's just like a speculative element in a book. Like I don't think there's anything weird about that. So I was thinking like maybe there's like some like a little bit of magic inserted, but like I also like fantasy, and this also doesn't feel very weird to me. Like I was thinking of a book I read a couple years ago that I loved, called 15 Dogs by Andre Alexis. And it had won the Giller Prize, I think, a number of years ago. And I picked it up, and it's about this, like, I think it was like a vet clinic or shelter or something. And there's 15 dogs in this clinic or shelter, whatever, at the time. And then these two Greek gods, I forget who they were now. Ares, or no, Hermes and someone else. Anyway, these two like Greek gods are going by and they are making like a wager. They're talking about like the nature of like humanity and mankind, and can men really be happy? And they make a bet, and one bets that like if you gave sentience to an animal, like human level of intelligence rather, would they be happier than mankind is, or would they also like die miserable essentially? So they make this bet that like, okay, we're going to give every dog in this, they're passing by this clinic or whatever, every dog in here a like human level intelligence, and like I win if at least one of them will die like happy. And then you follow these 15 dogs from that moment until their deaths. And like it's weird, it's very weird, but like I was all about it. Because yeah, it's not quite like a speculative book, it's just like a little bit of magic, but it talks about kind of like the nature of like humanity, and like I love stuff that kind of tackles those like philosophical kind of questions. Anyway, so that's one of the weirder ones. But actually, you know what? I think actually the weirdest book I've ever read doesn't even really have any magic or speculative elements or anything in it. I think the weirdest book I've ever read is Catch-22. That was a weird reading experience. I ended up loving that book. I gave it 5 stars, but when I first started reading it, I didn't understand what the heck was happening. If I hadn't read that when I did, like if I was reading it now, I probably would have DNF'd it. So maybe this is just like calling myself out to not DNF stuff like so quickly. Because back when I read Catch-22 was a time when like I didn't really DNF books. I kind of like tried to stick it out. And I didn't understand what was happening. I was like, this book is nonsense. And there just came a point where I decided, oh, you know what, just like stop trying to understand it and just like read it and get it over with kind of thing. And the moment I turned off my brain, everything in that novel clicked. And it's hard to explain. It's like a wartime book, but it's, I was going to say surrealist, but it's not, that's not the right word. It's absurdist. I think that's the better word. Like it's both incredibly tragic, but like hilarious. Yeah, it's a very absurd book, and it's probably the weirdest book I've ever read, but it's one of the best books I've ever read. But yeah, it was hard to like wrap my head around it. I should reread it. Margaret says, weird, says disjointed to me in plot or pacing. Yeah, well, it's like, it's a hard word to, like, what do you, I think for some people who may not read like genre fiction, maybe a little bit of magic thrown in would be like a weird book, but like, I don't really get on with like experimental type writing. So like to me that would be weird, but like someone else would just be like, well, that's just playing around with writing style. Like that's not weird. Okay, so Glenda was saying the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Many people loved it. I think I had problems with too many unlikable characters in the setting. You may love it. Unlikable characters don't typically bother me. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. I think it's one of those things that's like hard to do well, to make an unlikable character well. Loved Catch-22. We're good. We're glad to hear it. Margaret says, I usually don't appreciate absurdist books. You probably would not like Catch-22 unless you've already read it, and you did like it. But it's a weird one. Oops, I missed one here. You missed one of my comments up there. Oh, sorry. Have you watched Doom Antidote's channel? I have never heard of Doom Antidote. You're going to have to Educate me. And Glenda says, but I hated the Metamorphosis. I have not yet tried to read that. Is that Kafka? Or am I mixing that up? That's one where it's like, it's so, what do they call that? Like a Marmite book. It's so divisive. Like I have no clue, like if that sounds like a book I'll like or not. Pensively Reading had asked me if there was a book that I loved from childhood or that I hadn't read in a long time, which I'd be nervous to reread in case it doesn't live up to my memory of it. I have reread childhood books and like have still enjoyed them. But there is a book that I used to say was my favorite book. I don't think it's actually my favorite book, but I just think I was really into it at the time and it's probably one of my favorite books. But I haven't read it, oh my gosh, probably since my early 20s, and I am now 38. So it's been a while. It's been like 15 years. And that's The Long Walk by Stephen King. I own it. And it's a dystopian where there is a competition where young men between the ages of, like, I forget, like 18 and 22 or something, like young men, 100 of them participate in the long walk. And I don't think they say what the prize is. Maybe they do, but I think it's kind of insinuated that the prize for winning the long walk is like rich, like that your family, like you'll be taken care of. So that you'll have like money for the rest of your life kind of thing. And it's a story where they have to keep walking and they have to maintain a certain miles per hour. They can't dip below the pace. And if you dip below the pace 3 times, then you get your ticket, which you know what that means. They're done. They get shot. And so it's this group of 100 men who walk for like days. And I love a dystopian. And I loved that book in high school and in my early 20s. I read it many, many, many times. But, that was this question. But I haven't read it in so long that I'm like, I don't know if it would hold up or not. I feel like it would. I generally get along with Stephen King's writing, not all of it, but there's also like a certain era, like peak Stephen King that I get along with. So I think it'd be fine, but I would have to reread it to find out. But I'm a little worried that it might not hold up. I don't know. Chelsea, Voyage of a Time Wanderer had asked, what is the book you have reread the most? I pulled this one off my shelves because I knew it instantly. And it's this one, On the Banks of Plum Creek, by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is the 3rd in the Little House series. This is my book from childhood. I don't know if you can see, like, there's like marker on it. One of my brothers had like drawn little people on the inside. It is tattered. It's starting to separate from the spine in certain places. When I was like in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, like so between the ages of say 8 and 10, I read this multiple times a year, over and over and over again. And I don't know what it was. I just loved Laura so much, and their adventures of like moving to this town and like they live in a dugout, and like there's like Nellie, what's her face? Oh, hate her. It was just like the perfect type of book for me. With like this like kind of plucky center, like girl character at the center of it. I was really into that. I also love Anne of Green Gables, so that was the kind of heroine I was into. But yeah, I love that book so much. And I still love it. I never read, so little aside with Little House. So I had the first one, which is Little House in the Big Woods, which I had only read like a couple times. I don't remember it super well. And then I read this one, which I read over and over and over again. And I didn't know growing up that there were like other books. I thought those were the 2 books about like her childhood. And so in between Little House in the Big Woods and this one, On the Banks of Plum Creek, is Little House on the Prairie. And so I didn't read Little House on the Prairie until I was an adult. And let me say, that one, there are some problems. If you know, you know. So I'm like kind of glad I didn't read that one as a child, because I probably wouldn't have known what I was reading. But like, their views on, yeah, on the Indigenous people where they were trying to settle was, it was a bit much. But this one, as far as I can remember, doesn't have any of that kind of like attitude. So this one is like a much safer read for a child. Oh, I'm behind on my comments. I can see. What did I miss? Chelsea says, I love that cover. So springy. The way the book made living in a dugout seems so cool, right? And like now as an adult, I think to it, I'm like, oh my God, that must have been like such a hassle. Cause like I do remember parts where like they were like washing the walls down, and like Ma was always like had the broom out to try to get like the dust out and whatever. And like as I grown up with responsibility, I'm just like, oh man, living in a dugout sounds hard. But as a kid, I was like, that is the coolest. I want to live in a dugout. Yeah, it really kind of glamorized pioneer living, which was like, oh man. Glenda says, I've reread 84 Charing Cross Road so many times. A lot of people say that, like, not just that they love it, but that they read it over and over and over again. That one's on my list. I am going to get to it eventually. It sounds like a nice, like, book to go to when I'm feeling in the mood for something like heartwarming and cozy. Chelsea says, that's the book with the leeches, right? Yes, it is. My sister is still kind of scared of swimming in lakes, rivers, things of that. Yes, and so they set up the leeches early because I think Laura gets them on her, and then later there's a callback to it because Nellie comes over for Laura's birthday party, and she's a little brat, and they trick her into the pond, and the leeches get all over Nellie, and it's like the best thing ever because we all hate Nellie. Oh, Melissa Furman's here, just jumping on now. Happy birthday, thank you. Thank you, fellow Melissa. And Margaret is such a heart squeeze, 84 Charing Cross Road. Yeah, that's what I've heard. So it's one of those ones I've been kind of like saving when I'm like, if I feel like I need a warm hug in a book, like I'll read this. I have one question left on my little pre-made thing here. From Chelsea, is there a book you wish you could experience for the first time again? I found this one hard because I think like a lot of people would say like something that has like a big twist in it, but like that's not necessarily why. So I had to think about like, okay, what would have to be in a book for me to want to read it for the first time? And like would have to be like a book that I really, really love. Not necessarily just one that had a good twist, but like one that I really love that I just want, like one that I really got into or felt like emotionally invested in, that I want to like experience that again. And the first thing that came to mind actually isn't my answer. The first thing that came to mind was Lord of the Rings. I was like, oh man, to read those for the first time again. But then when I was thinking about it, I'm like, no, because I read those at the right time. Like if I like could wipe my memory and read them for the first time now, I am sure I would love them, but it wouldn't have been the same experience as when I read them in high school. And I read them right before like the movies were just coming out. So I read Fellowship before Fellowship came out. And so I kind of read them right before each one was coming out. I was like, yeah. I was swept up in kind of like that hype train, I guess, because I had previously read The Hobbit and loved it. And I had always meant to read Lord of the Rings, and then I heard these movies are coming out. I'm like, well, I'll read the books first, not knowing how much like I would love the books. And there's just something to be said about having read them in that time when there was like, when Lord of the Rings was just like this cultural phenomenon. So I wouldn't want to read those for the first time again. I'm glad I read them when I read them. And so the only other book I really could think of, because I don't really have like one book that really stood out, but I was thinking of one, not necessarily with like because of like a twist, but more so because of like tension, because I really like a book that's very tense. Like I like sitting in that feeling and like feeling like I have to flip the pages to like relieve that tension. Like, when's the relief coming? I need to know what happens. And I think for me, that would be Rebecca. Like, there was just the tension, the building of tension in that book. First of all, it's gothic. Love a gothic feel. But also, like, the tension building is so perfect in that book because it starts off so slow where you're like, everything's fine. Like, but why do I feel so nervous? Like, why do I feel so tense? And like, for the first big section of that book, nothing bad is happening. Like, you kind of feel like, okay, well, the housekeeper doesn't really seem to like the new Mrs. De Winter. You know, but there's nothing like terrible. She just seems kind of cold and standoffish. But you just get this like feeling of like something terrible is going on and you don't know what it is. And the experience of reading Rebecca, and then like, I'm not going to spoil it because I think there are so many wonderful things to discover in that book. But just like the tension just builds and builds and builds. And I love that feeling. And like, I am going to reread it at one point, and I'm sure I will love it on a reread, but it's not going to have the same feeling because I know where it's going. And so like, I wish I could reread that. I could read that for the first time and like feel that tension because it was great. I'm going to catch up on comments. And oh my, I've been on here for an hour. I thought I'd be on here for like 30 minutes, but I can be a chatty Cathy when I get going. Margaret saying Sunshine by Robin McKinley is my go-to reread. I haven't heard of that. A warm hug with a gut punch. I mean, that actually sounds great. I love a warm hug with a gut punch. Margaret also says, I'm glad I read Lord of the Rings before the movies, but now I'm enjoying the nerdy, what's BTS? Oh, behind the scenes commentary on the extended editions even more. Oh my God, I love the extended editions so much. And the commentary, all the behind the scenes stuff. It's so great. I'm such a nerd for both the books and the movies. I think the movies are great. I feel like, I mean, I didn't like all the changes they made from the books, but like sometimes fandoms can be weird and a little much. And the reality is movies and TV are different mediums, and you cannot tell a story the same way on screen as you can in a book. And some things have to change. And I feel like for the most part, the majority of the changes they made in the movies, I think were the right calls. So I love them. I love them both. But I am glad I read the books first because I liked building that world in my head first. But I love the movies. I think they're great. Glenda says, I wish I could unwind and start the Louise Penny series fresh. I've never read any Louise Penny, but everyone seems to be in agreement. She's good. Chelsea says Rebecca would have been my answer too. That is a great book. And like one of those books that I think appeals to a very wide readership. Margaret still hasn't read Rebecca. It's so good. Although I'm always like a little bit hesitant to like hype things too much because you can overhype things and then someone's like, okay, well, it was fine, but you know, calm down. Glenda, yes, I would read Rebecca, but Sunshine, I'll look it up. Yeah, I hadn't heard Sunshine. What was that? Robert McKinley? I'll have to look that up. And Melissa hasn't read Rebecca yet either. I act shocked, but like I read it like 2 years ago, so I was also very late to that party. Margaret is listening to the production. Oh, I read that weird. Margaret says, listening to the production decisions is so fascinating. A war for the art to come first. Really a masterclass. Oh, this is the Lord of the Rings. Yeah. I remember getting those DVDs This was before Blu-ray. I remember getting those DVDs, or as they were coming out. My brothers got them for me each year for Christmas, like as they came out on DVD. And they're like, there's hours upon hours upon hours of behind the scenes stuff, and I watched all of it. Even stuff that I like had no interest in, I would watch, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the most amazing thing ever. Like, they had a behind the scenes thing with like the Foley artists and like how they made the different sounds, and like, anyway, all of it was fascinating. You're making me want to rewatch all of the like behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, it's really, really good. So yeah, like I said, I've been on here for like a little over an hour when I thought I'd be here for like 30 minutes. So I think I'm gonna wrap this up. Thanks everyone who either suggested questions on my announcement video or who came with questions today. And thanks to everyone who stopped by. It was really fun. And now that I know what the heck I'm doing on StreamYard, I'll be able to do my next live whenever I do that more seamlessly. Took me a while to figure out what the heck was happening. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. And thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's like subscribed to my channel and who comments on my videos. And like, we're all just lovely people. So that's it for today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.